How do you explain Harden's performance?
He choked, just like he choked with Oklahoma City off the bench as a sixth man, which really is his best role. I mean, he's too good to be kept as a sixth man. But the problem with James Harden is he's what I would call a dead-end player, which means that he's so good, he will be the primary ball handler on some team. He will be the primary offensive option on a playoff team. But he's simply not good enough as that guy to win you a championship. Not good enough. And so in a set, he's tantalizing because if he's available, of course, you're going to want to get him. But ultimately, he's a dead end. Now, when I say he choked, am I talking about, like, this indicates, Stephen A., some kind of character flaw in James Harden? No, I'm not even going there. But I do think it indicates something about upper echelon athletes once the playoffs start. James Harden's game is largely based on manipulating rules, drawing contact. That's not why that rule is in place, so players can get fouls called on them. It's so the defensive player doesn't foul. But James Harden and many others, by the way, throughout the history of basketball, have manipulated and exploited those rules so that they get to the free throw line, right? When he chucks up a shot, which is clearly not really a shot attempt, but the referees, I guess, well, philosophically, you can't prove it's not a shot attempt, and let him go shoot 3 free throws when he draws kind of BS contact to begin with. He's manipulating the rules in such a way that makes him effective. But in the playoffs, those things get called a little differently. And more importantly than that, when you don't have the upper-end athletic ability or some kind of freakish ability like Steph Curry's shot or Larry Bird's anticipation or something like that to compensate for other physical or athletic shortcomings, when you don't have something like that and so much of your game is based on the exploitation or manipulation of rules and you don't have that high-end athletic ability, come crunch time, you are not going to be as effective as the actual best players in the game who do have that stuff. It's the reason why guess hitters in baseball can hit well all season and draw walks and stuff, but when they face those fastballs in the playoffs, they don't hit as well. It's the reason why LeBron James, when push comes to shove, who has that crazy basketball IQ but is also the biggest and strongest and fastest, can get his work done when it counts most. And James Harden, when faced with real opposition and a disciplined defense in the playoffs where you're not going to get all those calls, a lot of his game's based on that stuff, and suddenly that stuff goes away. He lacks upper-end athletic ability by NBA standards. By the standards of the history of humanity, he's an upper-end athlete. By NBA standards, he lacks that kind of upper high-end athletic ability, and that is exploited in the playoffs, Stephen A.
You're waxing philosophically about it, and I'm not going to sit up here and say that you're wrong, but I'm going to say it's irrelevant on this particular day. James Harden didn't show up last night, to choke, to quit, to do the things that others said that he had to do or he must have done last night. You actually have to show up and be in attendance to do those things. And I don't know who the hell this guy was. I think there needs to be an investigation. Max Kellerman, he looked like he was drugged. I'm serious. I mean, it looked like somebody, I don't know what the drug is that mellows your mood and just has you just looking like you're in outer space or whatever the case may be. I don't know what it is. But I don't know what it is. I did not recognize that dude last night. Max Kellerman, he didn't attempt a shot in the first quarter. He attempted like 8 shots through the first 3 quarters. He was nowhere to be found. He wasn't aggressive. He was passing up shots to the point where teammates were looking at him and saying, damn, I thought you were going to shoot the ball. What is this? You had a whole bunch of people looking at him. It got so bad that he was sitting on the bench. It was just him and Mike D'Antoni, and Mike D'Antoni was spinning the clipboard because he had no solutions. He had no suggestions whatsoever. He seemed to be just as lost as everybody else. I wish that I could side with you and say, quote unquote, he choked. But that would mean you're panicking and all of this other stuff in terms of my definition. Max Kellerman, he never showed up. I think there should be an APB out for him. I think there should be some kind of investigation. I want to know what he was drinking before the game. I want to know who was near his food, his drinks, whether or not something was spiked. I don't know what the hell happened. I cannot believe how docile, how demure, how just out of it, he appeared to be no aggression whatsoever. And to me, that was what resonated with his performance. He didn't even try. And I said it on SportsCenter last night, Max, before I went on SportsCenter, immediately following the game, I had 5 Hall of Famers swearing he quit. By the end of it, it was 10 of them. They like, he quit. And I was like, don't you have to show up in order to quit? Because he didn't even show up. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
After I talked about the limitations of his game in terms of athletic ability and how that can get exploited, we also have to talk about the psychology of it, the emotional and mental component of his game. He choked in Oklahoma City as a 6th man in the finals. I mean, he choked. And this is not the first time, even in this series, that he choked. And this is without Kawhi Leonard. Forget about Tony Parker, really his counterpart on the other team in terms of primary ball handler. That guy's gone. But then the best defensive player on the other team is gone. And that's the moment that a James Harden-led team decides to have their lowest offensive output of the entire season by like 15-plus points. At that moment, Jonathan Simmons is shutting him down. Listen, you have to credit Popovich, because it's not just that he wasn't going offensively. Defensively, they tortured him in the pick and roll, went right at him, and he was exposed. This is why throughout the season, I always talk about we have to wait till the end of the playoffs to really see who the MVP is. All those regular season games, whatever. Every good player is taking his team. All the MVP candidates are taking their team to the playoffs. Then what happens? And when you need James Harden, he wasn't there. He's not an MVP candidate. Not really.